Welcome back to the Everything Property Podcast. Now, usually how I start these intros is I have a really long, big spiel about the person, their accomplishments. But I think the biggest compliment I can give to today's guest is Australia's best developer, 2 years in the making, Rob Graya. Welcome to the Everything Property Podcast. How are you?
Very well, mate. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on. Before we start, I didn't tell you about this and I've snuck it in. Our YouTube guests, anyone that's watching on YouTube, definitely tune in for this one. But we have I actually prepared a gift for you, Rob. And I want you to, this is an audio podcast, so the people that are listening to this won't be able to see it. So I want you to talk me through what you see. Obviously, you're a developer, you're making a lot of money, so it's not going to be a Rolex or anything like that you can't buy yourself. But it's a funny note to start on, and something that I found very interesting.
Oh, mate, this is a child's Ferrari toy. Thank you very much, mate. But it's missing something on the rear wing there, and a few logos missing.
No,
it's there. It's there.
Look at it. Look, front wing, rear wing, top of the car, driver's cab.
Oh, it does have the grey logos, mate. I love it. This is going to go on the mantelpiece for sure. I actually got called up this week about this, getting in the bad books.
Man, and you know what's funny? I went back on the socials when I was doing that. I was cutting out the logos, like 4 mil wide logo, and I was trying to find the original post. And I think do you take it down?
Yeah, had to archive it. I know.
That was
it was a cracker, wasn't it?
Yeah. So look, anyone that doesn't know the context is, whose idea was that, by the way?
I came up with majority of it, but there was another person in the office which really complimented the idea. But essentially, April Fool's was coming up. We're in a marketing meeting, and I saw a few years ago there was a marketing company that did a really good April Fool's where you probably saw it. I think their company's called Third Aesthetic. They did a pretend island development in Sydney Harbour, and it was such a high quality production and animations and renders and videos and websites and logos that it was such a far-fetched idea, but it was believable because of how high quality it was, because that's what they did as a business, and they were marketing how good their marketing and their renders were. And I guess based off that, we started playing with ideas of should we pretend like we're doing a swimming pool in Burleigh like icebergs in Sydney, and we did all this content, but it just looked too fake, and we're like, nah, it's too unbelievable. And I'm a big fan of F1, and we just went to F1 the weekend before, and we're in the Ferrari pit lane, and I thought, you know what? Like, I reckon this is believable. Like, we know how expensive it is, but it is half believable. So, we started playing around with some CGI and whatnot, and the rest is history.
Mate, to be honest, it was quality. It got me. I remember I saw it and I thought to myself, I was like, wow, these guys. I think was it 20 mil? 20 mil the deal?
Yeah,
or something?
20 mil. In reality, it's a lot more. So I think anyone in the know would have said, it's a bit light to sponsor Ferrari on the rear wing like that, big grey logo.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I was like, the boys are doing good. I didn't know they were doing that good, but like, hats off to them. And it was the day before April Fool's, so I was like, ooh, that's tough timing. But I was like, if it was April Fool's, everyone would have known.
Yeah, I think it was a few hours before the deadline. I think the planning apps, stuffed that up a little bit, but it worked out quite well. And I was pretty surprised how many people actually believed it, and were such advocates of Graya being a sponsor. And after that, like, I got so much respect for Ferrari as a brand and a business. Yeah. So don't want to offend anyone. So I did feel a little bit bad afterwards, but it is something that we aspire to be, and now it's actually on the bucket list of something that we want to do. And I didn't realise how much clout that would get, and how much love people had for that red Ferrari. And it's one of our goals now.
Yeah, man, that was. I mean, we'll look now. We know it's on the bucket list. Who knows? I don't know what the price tag will be, but you've got until then, you've got something to think about. You've got the little Circle G logos, the grey logos, front wing, driver's cab, everything.
Well, I don't know if you saw the Miami car just got announced, but it's got all the
no,
white and blue.
Couldn't get the model.
And so much backlash. They should just pay Graya to put it on there.
Oh, well, I was, I couldn't get the Lewis Hamilton. Like, they didn't have the figures out yet, like for 24, 25. So
I appreciate the gift.
Yeah, all good. The reason that we came up to Brisbane the last couple of days is we obviously had the Enclave project launch down in the Goldie. That's your biggest project to date. I want to talk a little bit about that, how successful it's been. But it's a unique site. It's a really big offering for Graya. a really big project compared to what you've done. Like you're obviously stepping up and building. So how did that sort of project come to be, and how's it gone so far? I think you've probably just launched, or you're close to launching. So how is that for you guys?
It's been the natural evolution for us as a business to move into a project of that size. Once we started completing these apartment buildings, starting off, 5 apartments, then went to 21 apartments, to 10, to 18. And, you start doing these size projects and you learn very quickly that, doing 5 apartments, single floors, or doing 20 is very similar. You still have the same development management team. You still have the same marketing campaign. You still have got to go through the same construction processes. And probably out of everything that we do as a business, the biggest step up was the construction. So just knowing that we can achieve that as a business was probably the only thing holding us back. Financially, we're in a position now that we can do these projects. So yeah, it was really the construction side of things, and we started off as a construction company. So it is our strongest arm of the business. So it's quite nice to know that we can do a project like that and change the Gold Coast skyline.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting and great to see. And like, we'll get into the floor plans and that kind of stuff. How did you find the site? It's pretty unique, shaping, aspect, views. Is that through your network, or is that, undercover, or is that
it was a network play, that one.
Yeah.
Getting sites is super competitive, Brisbane, Gold Coast, and you have to find a way in. And there's no single person that hooks us up every time. There's always a random story behind it. And Enclave, obviously the site speaks for itself. It's phenomenal, 80-metre frontage on a corner, about 10 steps to the water, preserved view lines. Just a phenomenal block size where you can get just these juicy single floor apartments, which is key. If the block was a little bit bigger, you couldn't do single floors, that'd be too big. If it was a little bit smaller, the single floor apartments would be too small. So it just absolutely nailed it. So about 3 years ago, it came across our desk, and we did go for it. We submitted an offer. It probably was a little bit big for us at the time, and our offers were a little bit low, and we missed out on it. But one of the 8 owners in the old building we're actually friends with, very good friends with. Andrew, my brother, was actually a groomsman at his wedding. Oh. So a close friend, and the developer that picked up the site, typical developer, option deed, and just played games and just wasn't doing, in my opinion, wasn't playing by the rules, and I guess he was following the contract, but a lot of the owners didn't really know what was in it, and essentially they strung them out for a few years. They didn't get a DA for a while. The design was they didn't put heaps of time and effort into it. They had heaps of projects going on, so I'm not sure what the play was. Maybe it was just bank a DA or work it out later. I'm not sure. But essentially we got the intel from our friend that they weren't settling, and they were kept extending the contract. So an opening arose where one particular unit became basically out of contract, and we jumped on it unconditionally and locked it up. So we got decent amount of money, but we're not going to go around buying single apartments, unless it's the best of the best of the best. But we don't want to just get stuck with all these single apartments. So it was a huge risk doing that. But after that, we sat down with the developer via Zoom a number of times, and I guess started negotiating. And we don't like to require sites that way, and we've never done it before. But essentially, we said, look, you can buy it off us. We wanted to do the project originally. We'd still like to do it. We're happy to buy the 7 apartments that you're under control. And essentially went back and forth for a little bit. There was some awkward, pausing of the Zooms, and some like 20-minute conversations.
Mute the convo and stuff.
Mute the convo.
Oh,
honestly,
no.
for like 20 minutes at a time. It was long and awkward, but we ended up agreeing that Graya would take over the site. They got paid a little bit more for their efforts. All the owners got a little bit more, and then we acquired the site. So yeah, that's how we got it.
Jesus. And in New South Wales, for example, you need 75% if you're going into trying to acquire apartment building.
Here you need 100. They're trying to bring in the 70% rule like Sydney, but it hasn't quite got there. And to be honest, even in Sydney's history, even though you have that rule, not a lot of it has gone to court and ended successfully. So it's not a path that developers want to take and push people out of their homes. That's not cool. So essentially, you need 100%. So you need to control it all, and it's difficult. So, but to get the right sites, it's just part of the process.
And what about design, right? Because I think one thing that you guys are doing really well that I haven't seen too much in the Sydney market is the full floor apartments.
Yeah.
And I know from that launch and looking through apartments, you've got 270 square meter apartments, which is a house size.
Yep.
Another cool thing is obviously single floor, so no one left, no one right. And then you've got these very generous sized widths in living and kitchen. So, I mean, what's the play with that? I feel like that's almost a risk, right? Because no one else is really doing it, or like, you know, you could try stack it with 2 a floor or 4 a floor plate. So where does the sort of need, or like, what's the logic or the thinking around just like full floor apartments and then a couple for the penny at the top?
Well, you nailed it. It's all about not having a neighbour. It's all about natural light from every angle. So it feels like you're in a home. It's even better than a home because you can go up in the air and you can get better views. It's secure. You generally have better amenity. You don't have to look after that amenity. So in Brisbane right now, and Gold Coast, it's starting to become more sought after than actually homes, which is crazy to think. But honestly, I can see why. And you know, it's just such a nice way to live these days. And Enclave floor plan speaks for itself. It's just the proportions are perfect, and we spent a lot of time analysing that floor plan and all the key things you need to live in an apartment of this house scales. Yeah, the team did a very good job, and we're glad to say that we designed that in-house. So we haven't just gone and tapped on the door of the best architect in Australia and said, "Oh, come design this." No, this is our creation, and we're really, really proud of it.
And for those Sky homes, you've got a 7 meter long kitchen bench.
Correct.
All right. So we did an office walkthrough, and what's cool is the guys have like a masking tape outline of the whole kitchen bench on the ground in the office, and 7 meters long. If you think about that at home, you don't really.
It's a lot bigger than it looks. Than you think. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, most bedrooms are like 3 by 3, so imagine like 2 bedrooms wide and some. Look, it's incredible. What's been the market feedback for a project like that?
Well, you're at the Enclave event last night. So in the last 24 hours, we've sold $80 million worth of property.
Wow. And it goes public when?
Essentially, it went public the morning after the event. So it's been the first 24 hours.
Huge numbers. Well, it wasn't always $80 million worth of projects. And what's cool now, I think you've restarted the Graya TV stuff, obviously on the street. For anyone that's been following long enough, or you don't have to dig too hard, but you guys are doing that back in the day, 7+ years ago. I was saying to you as well, looking back and rewatching some of those videos, a lot of the site walkthroughs and the videos that you were putting together, I feel like people are actually only doing now with like the quality. So he's had the media and stuff back then, but talk to me about a few of those sort of early projects. It was DJs, NRL players, it was hoarders' houses. But what are some of those sort of key ones, like when you started out, and the highlights or the standouts for you guys?
So that moment in time that you're talking about, where we first started marketing quite hard with these, hoarder houses, NRL players, rappers and whatnot, that was about 7 years ago. But Graya actually started 13 years ago. So there was 6 years that no one saw. And those 6 years I don't really like talking about, but essentially I started as a carpenter with a tool belt on, and I was doing deck renovations on my hands and knees, bathroom extensions, like the worst of the worst jobs. And that is how Graya started. And 6 years of hard work, we learned how to service a customer really well. We're analysing the market, every single day. Andrew, obviously, we joined forces and started into that early stages of those bigger projects. At the time, we thought they were the best projects in Australia, which they definitely they're great projects. So essentially, we knew that marketing would allow us to get to where we wanted to get to, and our overall goal was to be developing luxury apartments. So the marketing was really going to pave our way to get there. So taking on projects with the right people was really important for our journey. And don't get me wrong, there were some of those projects we made little to no money, and it was just part of the brand growing exercise. And we knew that having a strong brand would turn into a cash cow later in life, because like what you see in designer handbags and any jewelry and whatnot, like the brand, people will pay double and triple for something which has got a good reputation, has got a good brand. So getting it to that point was the key. So we would just every decision we made, every project we took on was all about building our brand. And we along the way made decent money and were able to scale from project to project. And we always look to do a bigger and better project next, because it just, we're young, energetic, our staff are the same. We hire people that have the same hunger and passion than we do. And, still to this day, like Enclave, we're looking to do a bigger and better project. And, that's made a lot of developers come unstuck, to be honest. So you got to be a little bit careful, and you got to know what your own ability is and not get too cocky, not get too confident. You've got to understand, what's realistic and what's not. And we have grown quickly from the outside looking in, but it's little baby steps in my view. It's always just been a little bit each time, and enough that, we've got a really good team around us now, and we're making those steps to move forward once we had the secure team and we had that right backing around us. We weren't taking big steps and big risks because we didn't have the people around us.
Yeah, okay. But I feel like the good thing with that context of you actually being on the tools is that you're putting together the bathrooms, you're putting together the kitchens at that one-on-one scale, and then it's just sort of, obviously apartments are a stack of those. It's a bit different in construction, but like then the houses, like it's you'd rather that, and the intricacies of bathroom layouts and stacks and all that kind of stuff than someone that's just coming into it, that's maybe comes in financial backing but doesn't get where a layout needs to be, or to be able to build something efficiently is just as important as how it looks too, right? Because cost and all that kind of stuff. So I feel like having that background, that background is not only crucial. I mean, I wish I did like building or something like that to be able to put it together. But is there any standout projects of those houses? We'll get onto like Maison, which was the first apartment building, but out of the houses, was there any clear standouts in terms of $1 million profit, or like that did really well?
There was plenty of $1 million profit projects in that pipeline we just mentioned, but some projects that just really elevated us as a brand. Darius and Kayla Boyd's house really springboarded us. Did a bunch of hoarders houses before that, so just a really good before and afters that got a lot. Went on Today's Show, things like that just got a lot of hype and a lot of interest. No one wanted to touch those things with a 10-foot pole, but we saw it as a cool storyline and a little bit of hard work that we weren't scared of. Some other projects that really sprungboard us, I guess, Boomerang House, just a phenomenal architectural home, went on an episode of Grand Designs. So knowing when we first started out as a company to end up being on an episode of Grand Designs to building a home was like the pinnacle, which was interesting because that was just the start.
Yeah, but like, what are back in the day? What are you picking up those hoarders out? Like, what was like a project price back then?
Back then we were picking them up around the $1 million mark.
Yeah, because I read one that was like, it was like 850, 500.
Yeah, it was sub 1 million. We're picking these hoarders houses up for, and we were spending around $1 million on the build and making $1 million. So there was some really good wins early days at a young age, and we were quite frugal and quite smart with reinvesting and building relationships with banks, because that was really going to help us get that pipeline of funding to keep going on to the next project.
So was it just literally taking that capital from like the renos, rolling it in?
We would roll every single one of our wins into a project within such a short amount of space. Like, I kid you not, we would have things under contract with settlements happening 24 hours after we'd have the money in the door. And we did that year on year because we the money never hit our accounts. It was just literally getting recycled from project to project. And that speed is what helped us move further ahead, because a lot of people just analyze things to death, and they're so gun shy, and they don't want to. They get their money in the bank, they take a breather, they go on a holiday, they wind themselves up for the next project, and then they go hunting, and then they wait for settlement, and then before you know it, that's a year's passed, and you're out of the market for a year. Yeah,
that's a really good point. If you can time it and stage it that way. Your first apartment building, bit of a breakthrough. I think Trav and I have a little Graya tour for after this, but if you've got anywhere else, we should go. But I always like, I've seen it, I think 1 or 2 times, but Maison was your first apartment endeavor. Talk to me about that, because there would have been a heap of mistakes, learnings, and like even sales we'll go into too was crazy.
It was our first apartment building, but in our heads, we were planning that for probably 3 or 4 years. So it almost came later than we thought, because the DA process took a little bit longer. So for us, it was a big build up. Like, once we had got the design right, we had built it in our heads. It was just the formality of delivering it. We knew it would go off. We knew it would be iconic for Brisbane. We knew everyone around Australia would know this project and would say, Graya's now in apartments. So we were just itching to get it built. And the build process, we built that in 11 months, which is crazy.
What's the size? Like, give me basement size and levels.
Basement on grade, which helped the speed, and then there's 5 single floor
Basement on
apartments
grade
above that, and then a rooftop with 2 pools. So I think not having a basement in the ground definitely helped that speed.
Wow.
But mate, we sat down with so many different like mentors, people we really trust and value, and nearly every person said, do not do that. You're going to have leaking issues, water issues, and that's going to be like the worst thing for your brand you've ever done. And everyone told us to sell it. We had juicy offers to sell that site. We could have made, I think it was like 1 to 2 million just on the site. Bigger developers that we looked up to wanting to, purchase it off us. The site was not huge by any means, but it was on a corner in a really good street. We held our ground, and if we'd sold that and just pocketed that money, like I think 90% of people would have done, we wouldn't be sitting here today, and we wouldn't be, selling $80 million of Enclave apartments in the last 24 hours.
So 5 full level apartments?
Yep, 5 full level apartments, and some of the resales were huge on the project. So, and that really springboarded Graya as a company. So a level 3 bought it off us for $2.9 million. They settled it. I think it was 3 months later, they sold it for $5 million. So, $2.1 million of uplift in a very short amount of time. And, there's countless stories of Graya products of people making anywhere from 1 million up to 4 and a bit million, in 12 months off the back of Graya products. So, if that doesn't, speak volumes about the quality of our build, the value we add to our buyers because we're doing all of the design, the build, the development, and reselling it. It's not only is it a brand exercise, but it's also an investment to own a Graya. So it's created dividends for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean it's almost, you're almost spewing like you just didn't hold a couple and sell them after the settlement, right? After you finish the project. But what I want to clarify as well is, I mean, off the plan apartments are typically not the best investment, but I think the difference here is both the scale and then I think the scarcity of the product and the Graya brand, because it's like people want to buy Graya rather than just an off the plan apartment, because you could have picked out 100 projects in that same time frame in Brisbane or Sydney where it was a stack of 150 apartments where I'm sure people settled on stuff and it was either worth the same or worth less and it hasn't grown as much. But was there any other big learnings from Mason that you had to put into other projects? Or
we learned a lot. The biggest fear I had with Mason is that I came from building houses. I didn't have experience building apartments at all. I hadn't even set foot on an apartment site, to the point where I nearly actually partnered with an outside person for Graya apartments because I didn't know what to do. And I was fearful that I needed someone to teach me. And thank goodness, I think it was my old man that just said, just back yourself, like you'll work it out. Don't partner. And he's always sort of drilled that into us. And, if that closing door moment or opening door moment, like I'm so glad I took that different road, because, Graya units, could have had someone else as a big partner in that. And it's gone in a completely different direction now. But, building a unit building without anyone showing you how to do it was interesting, but like how we learned how to build houses, there's no one shows you how to do it. You need to work it out for yourself, and there's a lot of people around you that are involved in the project. They have a lot of knowledge, and if you're smart enough and you can sit down with the right people and you communicate and you plan ahead, you can literally work out how to do anything. And that's what that shows. Like now we look back and building, changing the Gold Coast skyline with Enclave is crazy to think that there's no one taught us how to do that.
Yeah, but I feel like you've got your team, right? You've got your project managers, you've got those site guys that have been on those sorts of sites.
Yeah, completely team effort. And there's, when I say no one's taught it, I mean like there's no specific person. It's more like hundreds of people.
You don't just watch a YouTube video on building apartments.
Correct. But it's collaborative, and that's the mindset. Like we've done plenty of projects with clients that we didn't need to do, with JVs we didn't need to do, but in Andrew and I's inner core, we actually love what we do and we love working with people. And if we're passionate about the project, it might not make the best commercial sense sometimes, but if someone else has introduced the site or it's a buddy of ours or whatnot, we'll collaborate because we just like working with people. And we get enjoyment from that.
Had that pocket of Brisbane, I don't know the Brisbane market too well, but had that pocket of Brisbane seen the full floor apartments yet? Or like, had they been done
Very
well?
scarce. Like there was, Melbourne and somewhat Sydney had this owner-occupier apartment market. Brisbane didn't. There was a couple of people that did it a few times, but people were like, why would I live in a big apartment? Like there's no land. That's not going to go up in value. Like what a bad investment strategy. That'll just be the rich people downsizing that don't care about money. It's like, it's completely changed the market. To today, haven't announced it yet, but we've just transacted an apartment in Brisbane, which is north of 23 million, which is the record for Brisbane. So we've achieved the record for houses, apartments, and square meter rates. And it's now more sought after to live in a luxury apartment in Brisbane in these inner city suburbs than it is to live in a house, in my opinion.
Wow. So it was literally, there was no proven track record really.
No, there was very little comp.
And you guys backed yourself and said, we'll do full floor apartments.
Yep.
On your first apartment development.
Yeah. No, it was planned. Like Brisbane, you can see the track record of cities like Sydney and Melbourne. So you're not pioneering anything. It's an educated decision of like what's happening in the market, and we just understand what people want. We sit in hundreds and hundreds of meetings with people that wanted to design their houses, their luxury homes. So when you've sat there and each project you do it 30, 40 times, when you do that over and over and over again, you just know what people want. And I didn't even look at it like that. I didn't look at it like, oh, this is a risk. I just knew that it's sought after because of all the things I mentioned before.
Jesus. And then what are your sort of next steps from there? You finish Maison, you go, wow, the feedback's incredible, the sales are incredible. You roll on to the sort of next few projects. So what's the sort of mentality at the business at that time? And where do you sort of move to from there?
The encore of Mason was a bit of pressure because we're like, geez, how do we top that now? Like that's tricky. Yeah. And we actually had a lull of purchasing sites. It's probably the biggest lull that I remember in our history of our career, that in housing world, every off-market property that was suited what we do would come to us, come past our desk through all the agents that knew us and we had contact with. But when we moved into the apartment space, we were the smallest fish in a big pond. True. And the funds weren't as big as all of the competitors, and we weren't getting nothing shopped to us. So it was a scramble. I think for 12 months we couldn't find nothing. And obviously we were still getting used to the feasibility side of things. We were still getting used to the gross revenue sales numbers, and there's no two sites are alike. So there's a lot of differences in the sites we're looking at. But we ended up finding a site in Bulimba, which was across the river, still a very prestige suburb for Brisbane, but it was across the river, a suburb that we previously hadn't done anything in. Except for Quade Cooper's house. We've done a renovation for him. And we found this site that was 1,700 square metres and only a 3-storey height zone. So it's very much like a Melbourne type development project where a lot of their 3-storey cap. And that was canvas. So we designed 21 apartments. And at the time, our design team, it was too big of a step. And we were busy designing a lot of houses. So we actually outsourced that design to Bureau Probitz, which was at the time and still is one of Brisbane's best luxury architects for apartments. And they absolutely nailed the design. I think we went through about 30 facades, trying to it's not good enough. Yeah. Or too expensive, this, that. And we eventually came to the fluted concrete precast and the cascading plants down the middle, and the way they all laid out between the apartments is quite hard because where those fluted columns are, there's 2 units left, 2 units from structure, and then we wanted to do bigger apartments higher up and smaller apartments lower, and we wanted pools down there. So it was quite an interesting one. Yeah,
like even looking at that and looking at Maison, even with the sort of like timber sort of style concrete finish.
We don't choose easy stuff to build.
I was going to say, any builders looking at that going, that's a headache. And even the same with canvas is those sorts of ribbons are where that structure should be. So it's like...
It's got big balls, I think.
I mean, it's just interesting to watch because it's like, not only did you guys not go... and like watching this is why it's so inspiring and that, because it's like, not only did these guys not just go safe, and you could have tried to put lipstick on a pig with like a box with maybe a fancy little, bit of landscaping or screen.
Nice palm tree that you don't do.
Exactly. Yeah, that comes out of the render. But it's like, you guys picked these ridiculous fixtures and finishes, and in the apartment space, it's absolutely crazy. What I want to know, what is your timing in terms of what year are we at? Because I think Mason was 2020, 2021?
Something like that.
Okay. So it's really the past sort of 4 years where we've just absolutely exploded and went on to do, you know, bigger and better things. I want to know what else is, what about the other projects now that you have on the go or that you're just finishing up and under construction?
Yep. So after Canvas did very well, yeah, we did York that went very well. We went Chalk and New Farm that went very well. Cloud Palm Beach went very well, and that was sort of like another milestone of all right, this is really starting to fall into position, and the team's getting very strong. We're starting to get some repetitive nature without getting better processes internally. So that we started moving into sort of Arc in Toowong on the river there, which is, you know, another step up, and Enclave and things like that, and Atria on the water in Toowong. So just starting to handpick these A triple plus locations and going, you know, if we're going to put our heart and soul into projects for like 2 to 3 years at a time, it's like we don't want to be touching projects that are okay, or, you know, we're just doing it to make some money and, you know, and rug pull when no one else makes money after us. Like, let's just create the best legacy we can for Graya, do the best projects in the best location, and add value to everyone purchasing in our buildings, that when we sell it to them, we do well, and then when they on sell it, they also do well. And you know, it's exciting, and the stuff we've got coming up is way better than what we're doing now, which is crazy exciting.
Yeah, we'll jump into that after. But the next couple of projects, I'm keen to hear, when did sort of the turn come, and, you know, agents start noticing, people start noticing? Because obviously the first one, Mason put you on the map, first maybe couple, but like, was there any of those that are a standout, or, you know, when does that flip switch where it's like, oh, Graya's a big play, like starting to play now in apartments in Brisbane? And
well, I think Chalk and New Farm was really nice. It's 10 apartments, and we designed it in-house, which was another big step, you know, going from, you know, designing houses to, all right, now we're designing internally 10 apartments in the best suburb in Brisbane.
Was that, how many floors was that?
It was 3 4-story.
Okay.
So, you know, still somewhat, you know, medium-rise projects, so quite boutique in nature, but, you know, as I said, the processes are still very similar than doing a really bigger project. And, you know, off the success of those sales, and that construction was going very smooth, we purchased Cloud in Palm Beach, which was a big undertaking. So Cloud is on Jefferson Lane, like, which is right on the beach, but it's on the dry side, and there's houses in front, so it's got this, you could throw a rock on the sand. It's phenomenal. It's actually a 9-story height limit there. And when we purchased this block, I think we purchased it for around the $10 million mark. We did a code application at 9 stories, because traditionally in Palm Beach, the community has huge backlash for anyone that goes impact. And there's
just explain as well, a lot of New South Wales, other state audiences, what's code and what's like the planning approval system in Queensland.
So code means you're designing within the parameters. So in Palm Beach, it's basically 9 stories. So if you're 9 stories or below, you're submitting a code development application to council, and generally it's somewhat fast-tracked because you're sticking to what they want in that location.
So like setback, size, FSR, that kind of stuff?
Setbacks don't trigger code or impact. As far as, well, they don't in Brisbane. I don't think Gold Coast. Yeah. It's mainly heights and things like, and type of use, things like that. Wow. Okay. Interesting. So at the time we don't want to upset communities that we're coming into. So we said we're going to do the 9 stories. We're sticking to the rules. And at the time, we'll talk about the June play was happening on the side. So the June play was a marketing exercise for Graya units to come to the Gold Coast, which we'll talk about in a second. But we first submitted Cloud at a 9-story height limit, and we got the build price. And we were sitting there going, oh, wow, like, this is when build prices were moving like quite drastically, and we were experiencing it day to day in the construction world, dealing with all our subcontractors. But this was the first, like, a big tower. It was 19 apartments at the time with the 9 stories. And when we got the build price, we were a bit shocked, and we were like, oh man, like, the finishes were solid. We don't want to cut out finishes because of our brand and reputation. We don't want to dumb down the facade. We don't want to dumb down what our offering is, at what our buyers are getting. and the price was just too high, and it wasn't as feasible as we first thought.
Oof.
So it was a hard pill to swallow, and we made the decision that we would start planning to put in an impact submission, which essentially means they have a 50% uplift line where they basically say you can lodge an impact DA, which is outside of the rules, but it's still within the 50% uplift criteria. Okay. And essentially they will consider it. But when you do go over that code and you go into the impact territory, you might convince council, and that's fine. And unfortunately, the more scary step is that it opens up for public scrutiny. Okay. And scrutiny's fine, but it's more public legal scrutiny. So you've got to put a board out the front. They've got a certain amount of days to submit an
similar
objection.
to New South Wales. Notification period.
And once they put in that objection, that gives them the right that when you get the DA, they've got 30 days to appeal that decision. So essentially, when you've got hundreds of community members that don't want this thing to happen, all you need is one person to basically put in that initial submission and then appeal it. And then you end up in court for, just to get to mediation with this person would take 6 months roughly, or you could be in court for 2 years, and that can cost $500,000, and that's really not that much compared to what you lose on like your project not going ahead and your interest you're paying the banks and things like that. Mm-hmm. So, going into this code territory is quite risky, and you don't want to do it if you've got everything on the line, you can't afford the interest bills. So now we've got more appetite for doing that, and we're not too worried. But at the time, it was a big decision, and strategically we took a risk. So we basically made the basement a little bit bigger. We did 2 fire stairs because you needed to do that to get over the 9 stories.
Did you put that in the original submission?
So we ended up putting it in the original, what we got approved. Yeah. We added the extra cars, the extra stairs into a minor change, and we started building. And it was the best decision we made because we knew that once we started building, the community then would be like, too late. These guys are going ahead anyway. So they're not arguing about stopping the tower going up. They're only arguing about stopping 9 stories to 12 stories going up. Yep. And the 50% uplift was actually like 15 stories, and we weren't going to go for that, and we just did enough that we could make the project feasible again. And 2 full floor apartments above what we had approved, and a private rooftop. So we essentially got the DA, and there was a lot of conversations with community people, and a lot of people we had to sit down and have coffees with and mitigate that risk. Okay. And we ended up getting I think it was one of the first impact DAs in Palm Beach, and then since it's been a bit of an avalanche of a lot of other people following suit.
So no one came out to appeal that after?
We didn't get appealed. We thought for sure we were going to get appealed. We sat down with the right people, and I think they knew that like we set it in. It was not very visual from the street. We didn't pump it up too high. We just did 2 nice single floor apartments, and it's you only see it from when you're quite far back.
Hang on a second. This is the one that's got the vertical sort of leaf throughout.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it looks like a little bit like a palm tree.
Because I know what you've done here.
Yeah.
Because your renders are from like ground floor looking up, right?
Yes.
So you can't see the extra. Yes. It's very smart. Good play. Nice. I like it. What was the play with June that was on the side?
So how we were successful in our apartment sales was obviously because we had lots of houses that were marketable, and people trusted the brand because we came from luxury homes, and it gets a lot of attention when you have open homes and you market homes and whatnot. So when we knew, all right, let's branch into Gold Coast, the council there is very friendly to developers. There's lots more height. So us as a company, that's probably where our future will probably end up being. So as we branch into Gold Coast, let's do a rockstar house, and I need to be on the Gold Coast to help manage the company moving in this direction, because going to another city when you're a developer is pretty easy. When you're a builder in construction, you can't just pick up your subcontractors and take them to another city. You have to start from scratch, and a lot of other builders will be blocking you from what subcontractors you can use, and there's lots of funny business happens in the background when people see you as competition, which we get a lot. So essentially, that's where June came along my desk, and Megan and I decided that we're gonna buy it. We're gonna design something really unique on the hill, looking over Burleigh, which is very famous for not just Australians but worldwide. And this home, I think you've probably seen the history of that home, but it's transacted a few times now, and it's got a lot of attention. I think everyone in Australia knows the house, so it's helped us to know everyone on the Gold Coast now knows, not everyone, but a lot of people on the Gold Coast know who we are, and it's helped the process. What'd you pick up that site for? I think it was like 2.9 or something or 2.8. Oh no, it's 274 something.
Okay, so just below 3, and you sold it for originally to
We sold it for 11 mil to Adam.
Adam.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's a big house, but
yes, I think it
working
was.
backwards from there. I don't know if you can you go into numbers or you don't want to?
I can't go into numbers.
Okay,
but
fair enough.
But we bought it for 2.7
You can
or
work it out.
2.8.
People can work it out.
And sold it for 11. And what people don't know is what the build price was, but we did put a lot into the build because we didn't plan on selling. Like that was our home, and it was a marketing exercise to long term, but we're doing it as our home, and it was things that we loved and we wanted. So we were putting the best appliances, the best finishes, and treating. Everyone knows when a builder builds their own house, it's built well. Yeah, the rest is history. Adam convinced us that it was better for him to own it than us, and there's a million reasons why. And after talking to him for a long time, got to really like the bloke, and we connected really well. And I started thinking it's his house over my house just because it suited him, and I so used to fulfilling clients and customers' needs that I wanted them to have the house even though I wanted it, and it was a tough decision, but. He even bought the furniture off us, and he's now on sold it too, which is very interesting, and a lot of media on the back of that. But the next life for June is going to rock people's socks, but can't say too much about it. But essentially anyone might be able to own it for about a $10 entry.
Wow, I think
that makes sense.
I think we can put one on one together. Would that be like a would someone's name that rhymes with would someone's name that rhymes with Mortadelli be behind that purchase?
Oh, I know the billionaire you're talking about, and I've met him a few times, and we are mates. But no, it's not that particular person, but along those lines.
Okay, we'll have to wait and see. Keep an eye on that. $10, you'd be spewing if
I'm going to try and buy it back. I'm going to put a few entries in because I want it back.
You'd be spewing if the one person that lands it only bought one $10 ticket or something. Can you imagine? Okay, well, it's really, that's an interesting play with the code and obviously leveraging the brand off there. What's next after that? What's the next couple of, because they're the projects now you've got in construction.
Yeah, well, I think just to close out Cloud, we've only got 2 left out of 23 apartments, and early days, Ash Barty, the famous tennis player, actually purchased in there, which was really good. She had been talking to us for a number of years trying to get a great asset because she really liked the brand, and she purchased one early, so that was great hype for the project, and the rest is history. And having that one sold out allowed us to then let's go shopping, let's look for more sites. So things like we ended up doing some partnerships with some other developers that couldn't quite get their bigger projects. They were sort of struggling to get the build component working. So we did a few sort of partnerships with a few people, projects like Arc, which is on the water there, and James Street, which everyone's seeing at the moment, this huge hole that's getting built. So,
talk to me about that, because do you guys start the James Street Insta? Is there someone?
It's we got a few things coming on James Street, so there's something happening in the background I can't talk about.
No one's listening, Rob. No one listens to the pod. You can tell us, give us a little bit of a sneak peek.
Look, to be honest, the project in James Street with Form, Dave and Byron, that's going to be a lifestyle precinct for Brisbane, and there's a lot of commercial and retail in that building, which is basically a lifestyle destination. So like the Carlisle Hotel changed Brisbane on James Street there.
Oh, 100%.
It's the same architect, and it's the same offering on the streetscape integration, but it's offices above. So that particular project I just absolutely love, and there's a few around Brisbane and Gold Coast that it's become apparent to Andrew and I that we love these boutique luxury A-grade positions to live in. But something we're starting to love just as much is these retail projects where you do apartments from level 2 and above in really cool locations, and below your commercial, your retail, and getting people to come into the product, enjoy it, and you can actually, as a developer, retain that as passive income. Is something that that's where Graya is going to be heading.
Is there any apartments above James Street, or
no? It's actually all offices,
so
which for Graya is very unique and different. And
so there's not even a boutique hotel or anything.
No, because James Street's already got the best boutique hotel in Australia.
This
in
is
Carlisle
true.
Hotel. So putting that office above that is not only is it huge square meter rates, but that's just going to just put more foot traffic on the street. So it's it's very exciting for Brisbane when that thing's finished. I don't think people know yet. We actually haven't physically launched that project.
No, that's why I was asking.
People see this hole. People see this hole and they see the banners and everyone knows it. And and I reckon I'd get 10 times a week going, what is it? How can I buy an apartment? And I unfortunately can't do that. But it's going to be launching in the next few weeks, and it's a phenomenal project. And that's not going to be Graya's first little touch in that sort of project. So we've got something else happening soon on James Street, and probably the second best lifestyle street in Brisbane is Racecourse Road in Hamilton, which is just 2 suburbs across. And we've got a project there. We just secured 4,000 square meters, which is monster for us. And you can do 4 to 5 levels there. And essentially, we've got a DA right now that we're lodging in about 2 weeks for 60 apartments, and restaurants, wine bars,
and only 4 levels,
yoga studios, coffee shops, and it's really exciting. And the team is pumped. It's going to be our best grade project to date, and it's going to be something that we can help the community and help Brisbane. Like that street is iconic, but it hasn't had that life injection. It's sort of the retail people come and they don't survive very well today. But once there's 3 developers actually doing things, and we're wedged in the middle. So once all 3 are done, I think the street that's going to be on everyone's lips in Brisbane is not just going to be James Street. It's going to be Racecourse Road. It's
great. I mean, it's great how it is at the moment. So I think you guys adding to that with your touch, it's just going to be. I mean, it's a great little precinct as it is now. So if you're adding to that, can't wait to see sort of what it looks like. One question I wanted to ask you, across COVID and obviously construction prices, you guys aren't essentially a volume builder. So you don't have, how do I say, potentially the flexibility on volume in ordering stuff over. You know what I mean? You're not doing 1,000 apartments, so you don't have that leverage. How did you just go with COVID and like costs and like sort of trying to balance all that?
Not too badly. Like a lot of our projects' revenues dropped a little bit, like everybody's. There was a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of tough conversations we had to have with clients, buyers, subcontractors, and we looking back at it, I think we navigated it pretty well and relatively unscathed compared to most people. So we were pretty fortunate here in Brisbane. I think we had a couple of days where we had to like tools down. So unlike other states that had to stop work for huge periods of time. So essentially it was just the price rises was probably like the number one impact. Material, if you had fixed price with a subcontractor, even though you had a contract in place, if they had to pay double for that material, they're not going to honour that contract. So we were getting knocks on the door every 2 minutes about, what do we do here? Like, I'm not going to do that. So, we wanted to keep them on the job because they're not, it's not like we can go to the next subcontractor and they weren't experiencing the same issue. So, we just worked with each individual person day by day. A couple of the buyers and clients we had a few conversations about, and, essentially it went quite well. So it was a little speed bump in our road, but, thankfully it wasn't a huge train smash.
And that's basically because you're builder developer, right? You're not. Is there any too many client builds at that time?
Yeah, I think our model in Graya just being a builder developer and the design, we know a lot about all 3 industries, and some of the best developers in Australia are struggling to do anything right now because there's just such a big gap between them getting their DA and having this design, and then a builder giving them a real fixed price number, not these like indication numbers that they lodge DAs on. There's huge risk, but because we've got the live intel and we managed to mitigate that risk, and what else helps us avoid that risk is that we can move quick. Like we as soon as we get a DA, we'll be pumping out BAs in a couple months, and we'll be like doing demo. Is
it like construction documentation?
Yeah, we'll be doing demolition and doing basements with just a BA for the first stage, just to get going. Buys ourselves another 3 months to get some of the coordination done up the buildings, and gets us moving quickly. So we can just mitigate like market changes a bit more than most. Time can kill you. So in our world. So
I got a construction related question. How have you been able to build in terms of building quick? Is there anything that you're doing specifically on site that's allowed you to get up and get out of these jobs quicker? Like, are you doing
from a building material point of view? Probably just only really one thing I would say on that would be, some of our designs that that we do that people look at and go, oh wow, those are crazy complicated and whatnot, which they are. But we're always designing them with a concrete precaster in the room, and getting them made off site. So you spend months and months making these complicated things but they're in sheds under no weather implications. They're throwing away the bad ones, they're keeping the good ones, and having that get made while we're digging basements and stuff like that, having them ready to just like drop onto site when that's ready has really sped up our construction, even though it's really complicated construction. So I highly recommend that to anyone. The only other thing that I think our main point of difference would be just our company culture and our company procedures. So we've really worked out, from me being on sites from day one, what gets a building site going smoothly and what gets it just going horribly. And it's got a lot to do with culture, processes, and the team running the show. So not understaffing, the project management side, not understaffing the site management side, even like, it sounds crazy, but like having good labourers on site or good crane operators seems like a pretty low in their priorities to like many builders or many people, but to us it's actually crucial. Like if you can feed the job and clean the job and whatnot at a quick pace with gun crane operators and gun labourers, it speeds the job up drastically, and people underestimate that. And just having the right personalities, right? Like we just got a bunch of legends that work hard and it's just hustlers, and they're passionate, and they want to do better, and they're striving for something, and they're not just coming to work for a paycheck.
And they're pretty proud of the product, right? I think that's got a lot to do with it too, because some people are developers that are doing a product that's, how would I say, not cheap and nasty, but like just pretty stock standard. It's just like, oh, here we go, another apartment. But I feel like yours it's that art piece. Like, we can see it through your office here in the office, like every little bit of detail. It's like everything's finished.
And you need staff that are passionate, because they are harder to build. So you need the passion there. So that's something we hire on. But that render versus reality is something that is like in our DNA at Graya. It's like, as I said to you before off camera, when we design a project, we are rendering it like every weekend for a 6-month period, and we are looking at it like 30, 40 times, and we're like tweaking. So by the time we've actually got to a point where we're like at a marketing render where we're going to put it out to the public and we're actually going to build it, we've analysed slab thicknesses, screen thicknesses, where the planting is going to go, what sort of planting is that going to survive in Brisbane, is that going to work, what colour is that? We've analysed what we've drawn can be built, and when we build these things, they look better than the renders, where most people around Australia, like almost 95%, will not do a better product than their renders. And that's huge for us, and people know that because it's like, because we put it in people's faces. We're online, people wake up, have their breakfast, it's great, and they come along the journey. And I think people just trust that if we put something out there, we're gonna deliver it.
Where have you had your expertise or like your taste in design? Because as I said before, your videos have been really good. Like they were really high, like they were pretty decent back then, 7 years ago. Maybe the logos and stuff, as you would
the original Graya logos.
The original Graya logos in the green, like it was. But like, it's kind of like, I know people with bad taste and a lot of money, and they still can't buy the good taste, right? But you've sort of always had this really good taste and really good hold on design and marketing. So where's that come from?
I appreciate you saying that. In my mind, I'm sort of like, I'm 70% good, but I still feel like we need to get a lot polished. But mate, from an architecture point of view, there's a team of people doing that. It's definitely not just my ideas whatsoever. We do want to create a brand and a look, so we do influence the direction a lot. But from the marketing, like it's just like architecture, I'm just crazy passionate, and I spend countless hours online, and I learn a hell of a lot, and that's how we met. I learn a lot about what people are doing, not just in Brisbane, Australia, but internationally. And I don't just look at the best architects and just copy them like most people do. I'm getting inspiration and design ideas and marketing ideas from all over, whether it's luxury jewelry brands, whether it's fashion, whether it's sports, and implementing that into our industry. We're fortunate enough that what we do is just looks beautiful, and it's very easy to market it, and it's aspiring. Everyone wants to live in a nice place. So we're fortunate enough to deliver a product that is desirable to the eye.
Yeah, it's true. And I mean, that's one big thing, one big key that I think as well that you just touched on is that And for whatever reason, a lot of developers overpromise with the render, under-deliver. I've seen it firsthand. It's value engineered, everything's stripped out, taken out. And then the residents get in there and they go, oh, where is everything? Or
that's just a rug pull in my view. Like it's like that's
crazy.
not setting you up for success. And how's that going to help your next project? Like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one thing I found personally, and like being able to, I've made a promise to myself, obviously, not doing Graya apartments, but my own stuff, was that like, you want to be proud of that finished product. Otherwise, like even marketing competition, someone comes to buy a Graya product and has done the research and went to 3 or 4 or 5 of these other sites, and they go, wow, this is what it looked like. This is what they built. It's the exact same thing.
Well, yeah, like we used to have to do client testimonial videos and whatnot to try and get people to like, oh, I want you to tell your audience what your experience was, owning a Graya, so then the next person that's thinking of buying can see this video, like what everyone does, right?
Yeah.
But it's cool now that we can walk on the street and just go like, what do you think of Graya? And the whole community, like very often, knows who we are, which is pretty cool.
It's wild. Well, what about what's planned for the future? What's coming up? What's the next sort of 5-10 years look like for Graya? What direction we're heading?
Yeah, so as I said before, we really want to get into these lifestyle precincts, have really nice apartments above, but downstairs, beautiful restaurants, gyms, yoga studios, ice cream shops, coffee shops, and just create destinations. So a lot of our sites we have coming up in that direction. Mm-hmm. We're obviously sticking to the A++ locations on Brisbane and the Gold Coast. We've got a really exciting project coming up in Byron Bay called Water Lily, which is going to be a couple of homes, which is just like the absolute pinnacle of Australian
crazy
beachfront.
Site, ridiculous site,
which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Got one coming up, New Farm on the River, which is gonna smash every record there is in Brisbane. And long term, mate, we'd like to get to a point where we don't have to sell every project. We would really like to get ourselves in a position where we can retain some assets. We'll probably start with the retaining commercial, and then we'll go to retaining some resi, because we want to get into that short stay accommodation, long term hotels, things like that, and let people come and enjoy the great product. They can rent it for a week or two, rent it for 2 days, but then the next person can come and enjoy it.
Yeah, and it's almost a little marketing ploy too, so it works out double. I have a question for you, because a lot of our audience is like property investors and some of it's developers, and I feel like I've sort of blended between the two. But is everything in what you're doing investing purely into the next projects, or are you investing outside of this for like just buy and hold and that kind of stuff, or like commercial projects? Are you doing like any outside property investing, or is it just all developing now?
No, recently we're definitely doing some little property investing. So some side hobbies we have just in property, and I'll get to some other stuff shortly. But we're starting to own a lot of little apartments here and there. So if there's a really A+ site that we really like, and we know that it might not be developed now, but this will be developed in the next 20 years, and we will be building and developing in 20 years. Yeah. So we've got a lot of nice blue chip land unit holdings around Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and we've also invested into extending like the umbrella of Graya into real estate. So we've just recently invested in White Fox. So one of the most polished real estate brands in Australia, in my opinion, was expanding around Australia. So we've got investment in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, because that's where we operate. So that's really exciting. So that's investing in other businesses that complement Graya as a business. As you know, we have invested into marketing companies, X-Media and things like that as well. And we've tried all sorts, mate. We've done laser hair removal, e-com as well, but didn't work out too well. Like that was we just thought it would be a bit of fun, but didn't go too well, mate. We stuck to what we're good at.
Yeah, okay. And what was the other stuff? Was that the other stuff that
was the other stuff? Yeah.
Oh my god! Right.
Let's not talk about that.
No. We won't go into it. I mean, I'm sure you'll be dabbling in Ferraris and that kind of stuff a little bit down the track. But look, Rob,
do like the car investments too. But yeah.
Look, the future looks bright, and I can't wait to get in and stay at a few of these places. Obviously, we'll get an everything property discount.
Of course.
Yeah. But you guys are still doing a couple of little. Will you keep doing houses, or
look? We have some still got a huge passion for these one-off houses, and a lot of our staff do too. So, when you've got an engine and the processes and the staff that want to do these houses, we're still dabbling here and there. So one example is where Mick Fanning gave us a call and said, look, I want to do a trophy home and Graya home, and so we're working with him closely. So that's really exciting for our whole team. Yeah, and projects like that. But yeah. What
about you just finished up a couple too, wasn't it? Lark, and there was a few others that had recently sold and resold.
Yeah, so Casa Esprit actually sold in May last year for 8.7 million, and it transacted last week for 12.5 million. So that buyer got a $3.8 million uplift, which is pretty crazy in a space of 12 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
And anything else?
I think the other one that was a really good turnover is we transacted a project called Lark for around the $8 million mark. And that person on-sold it for 12.3 million recently, which was, $4.3 million is, a big number.
Uplift in what time period?
The uplift of that was about 18 months, I believe.
18 months, 4 million. Jeez. And before we wrap up as well, Rockabella.
Yep.
That's an interesting product.
Yep.
What's the story?
So Rockabella came from, I had a construction team that was working on June, and I didn't have another house for them to go to, and they didn't want to move to units. So I literally quickly bought something and put that one together very quickly. And we sold one for 8 million, and then the other one we actually decided that we're going to move into it in November this year.
Wow.
When we have our second child.
What was the site cost?
The site was circa 4 mil.
Okay.
Selling one for 8, second one obviously around 8, so 16 million GR. So, you can obviously guess the build, and, there's a little bit left. So it's a great project, and, Hedges Avenue in Mermaid Beach is the pinnacle of property, and it's where I've always wanted to live. And knowing that we're moving into Hedges Avenue in November is super exciting. So once I've got my roots down in that street, I'll work my way into some of those beachfront ones, and hopefully a big house there on a corner.
Well, if anyone's listening and they're thinking of selling, just let me know so I can option it up and then flick it on to Rob.
Love it.
Rob, the way we usually end these sorts of interviews, I always just ask one piece of advice and a quote you live your life by.
My favorite quote is "Build it and they will come," and I've had to have that motivation, and that I have to live by that, because when the build prices in COVID just went so high, the feasibilities made no sense. So you had to just convince yourself that yes, there's no comparables for what you're doing, but you should do it anyway. So build it and they will come.
To end on with maybe some advice for younger builders / developers, people out there wanting to do sort of their own take on a Graya style empire.
I think confidence is key, and just backing yourself. I know it sounds cliche and corny, but just having a crack. People are just too scared of having a go. And if my story can teach anybody that you can teach yourself and learn along the way, then that might give someone else the courage to have a crack.
Got to take action.
Got to take action.
Rob Graya, appreciate you coming on the Everything Property podcast.
Thanks for having me.